Let me review for you those states that are giving Republicans heartburn, because these are the states that are key to the control of the Senate. Maine, Colorado, Arizona, North Carolina, Iowa, and Georgia. And it's in that order, actually, and I want to walk you through those in particular. The incumbent in Maine is Susan Collins. That state has continued to drift to the left. Democrats, to make Collins pay back for Collins voting for Brett Kavanaugh, they have poured resources into that state for 2 years to try to defeat her, and it may very well work. Collins has been a mainstay in Maine, but that seat, Maine is now has a slight Democratic edge. It's D+3. Now, Collins won the race with 68% of the vote in her last election, but it has been trending very rapidly towards the Democrats. And Collins is probably going to lose. Republicans are starting to think she's going to lose. Republicans have been winding down money in that state as a result. The other seat is Cory Gardner. Cory Gardner is in Colorado. Colorado is technically a D+1 state, but the Republicans have a hard time winning there. Cory Gardner, he won 48.2% of the vote in Colorado. They don't have a runoff in Colorado. It has otherwise been a Democratic seat. He got it from a Democrat. It'll probably go back to a Democrat. Interestingly enough, he's the National Republican Senatorial Committee head. And he's going to outperform Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to lose Colorado, but it is on a knife's edge as to whether or not Gardner wins or loses. And the conventional wisdom is that Gardner is going to lose because Colorado voters are so opposed to Donald Trump that they just will punish Gardner for standing up with Donald Trump. Gardner himself is, although he's been perceived as a moderate in the Senate, he's been right on judges, and that's another reason the Democrats are out to get him, because he's going to vote for Amy Coney Barrett, and he voted for Brett Kavanaugh. The other seat is Arizona. And Arizona, Martha McSally in Arizona. Arizona is a Republican state. The seat has been trending to the Democrats. She is in John McCain's seat, and she is a terrible candidate. Martha McSally is a terrible candidate. She ran for Jeff Flake's seat in November of 2018. She lost Jeff Flake's seat to Kristen Sinema, and then when John McCain died, she was appointed to his seat. They thought having a Republican woman, very much the Loeffler scenario in Arizona, the male Republican governor thought having a female Republican combat veteran would actually help her hold the seat, but she's a terrible candidate. People genuinely don't care for Martha McSally. She's just not a personable person. She should be able to win, and maybe she can pull it out. But the odds right now are that she costs the Republicans 2 Senate seats in 2 years, which would probably put her as the worst candidate to ever run for federal office. So the Republicans have a 53-seat majority. If they lose Maine, Colorado, and Arizona, they lose the Senate, except there's Doug Jones. Doug Jones won his election with 50% of the vote. In the 2017 special election, he literally got 50.01% of the vote. And Doug Jones is going to lose. There is no saving Doug Jones. Doug Jones is toast. There fundamentally will be no saving Doug Jones. Maybe if Jesus comes back, Alabama voters are pro-Jesus. And if Jesus came back and campaigned on the stump for Doug Jones might be able to pull it off, but I'm not sure he could. Tommy Tuberville's going to win. So that gives the Republicans then, if they lose Colorado, they lose Maine, and they lose Arizona, but they win Alabama, that gives the Republicans a 1-seat majority in the United States Senate. But wait, there's more. In North Carolina, Thom Tillis is a terrible candidate. Thom Tillis is not liked by Trump supporters. You need to understand the fundamental dynamic in North Carolina. It is a slightly Republican seat. The president is barely ahead. North Carolina is very much a swing state these days. And Thom Tillis is hated by conservatives. He's hated by Trump supporters. He's not liked by the left. He's not liked by the right. He's kind of a mushy moderate no one cares for. And so he is losing to Cunningham in North Carolina, the Democrat. What is it, Joe Cunningham? There are two Cunninghams. He's losing to North Carolina's Cunningham. South Carolina has a congressman, Joe Cunningham. I've got a friend, Joe Cunningham. Who knew it was that popular of a name? In any event, Tom Tillis in North Carolina is barely hanging on. If Tillis loses, then the Democrats have a 50-seat majority in the Senate. Now, how is it a 50-seat majority? There are 100 seats. Well, because the vice president breaks the ties. But then there's Iowa. In Iowa, Joni Ernst is not a great candidate on the campaign trail. Iowa has some qualms about Donald Trump. Donald Trump won the state pretty significantly in 2016, and there's been a pretty significant backlash against Donald Trump in the state, and they're taking it out on Joni Ernst, who's kind of stood with him. And that's hurting Joni Ernst. I got to tell you, even the Democrats like her. You do need to understand this. She is a very likable person. I've met her. In fact, I moderated a Republican debate in Iowa 6 years ago when she was running. And she's a thoroughly likable person. She was in the military. She rides a Harley. She has been very open about she was in an abusive marriage, that she was a battered wife. She got out of the marriage. She's just a great person. She has one heck of a bio, but she hasn't been a great retail politician. And the Republicans are trying their best to hold on to the seat, but it's one of the tight seats they're worried about. So if you lose Iowa, now you've got 49 seats in the Senate. If you lose North Carolina and you lose Iowa, and I think the Republicans are either going to win them both or they're going to lose them both. They're probably not going to win one and lose the other because the dynamics in the states are so similar right now. And a lot of it is not so much a repudiation of the Republicans, but a repudiation of Donald Trump and trying to clean house. There's a strong independent sentiment. And remember, independent voters are Republican voters ashamed to admit they're Republican. And those voters in North Carolina and Iowa are repudiating Donald Trump, and it looks like they may repudiate Republicans in general. They're also in North Carolina taking it out on the Republican gubernatorial nominee. Now, where then does that leave us? Georgia. You got Maine probably going Democrat, Colorado probably going Democrat, Arizona probably going Democrat. You've got Alabama rebounding. That keeps the Republicans with a one-seat majority. And then if North Carolina goes away, you've got a 50-50 Senate. If Iowa goes away, you've got a 49-51 Senate. What about Georgia? Well, I don't actually think David Perdue is going to lose to Jon Ossoff. There's actually a lot of polling out there that Jon Ossoff is having trouble getting traction outside of the Atlanta area. David Perdue is known for himself, not for Donald Trump. In fact, if you look at the polling in Georgia, one of the most remarkable things in Georgia is that the Republican vote in Georgia is better than the president's vote in Georgia. The president in Georgia underperforms David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. The president's personal job approval popularity rating in Georgia is worse than Loeffler or Perdue or Brian Kemp or Johnny Isakson for that matter. Now, the Loeffler race is interesting because this is one of the Democrats' hopes. If Loeffler and Collins stay divided, they're hoping they can get Raphael Warnock a huge lead and fundraising opportunity for the November election. This is start with Doug Collins' entry into the race. This is playing out exactly as Republicans feared and why they wanted to keep him out. Because the Republicans are super divided and the Democrats are starting to consolidate around Raphael Warnock. Now, a lot of Republicans are shifting to Doug Collins. They don't particularly like the messaging that the Loeffler campaign is using. They don't like the attacks. But Collins has a base of support, and that's going to hold him through. The question is, if Loeffler builds up a base of support based on loyalty to Brian Kemp, she's in the lead right now. There are now 6 consecutive polls that have Loeffler in the lead. She spent $50 million, and she's got a lead finally. And Warnock and Collins are tied. This gives the Democrats an opportunity to fuel Warnock's rise and keep the Republicans divided in a way that gives Warnock an advantage. If Warnock gets to 50%, he wins outright. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to go into a runoff and you're going to have resources from both sides poured into the state. Now, the danger with that, if it's Warnock and either Collins or Loeffler in the runoff, is that the Democrats will use that month's advantage of fundraising to begin building the groundwork for Stacey Abrams for 2022. If the election were held today, if you just take the polling trends, don't take the poll numbers, take the polling trends. The polling trend suggests Joe Biden would get elected president and the Democrats would have a 50-seat Senate advantage based on the polling trends. Now, again, Donald Trump's vote tends to be undercounted. Republican votes tend to be undercounted. So Ernst and Tillis, they could win. Perdue, I think Perdue and Loeffler are probably it right now. Collins, maybe. Loeffler, she's a 6 straight polls. She's been ahead. Perdue, I think, beats Ossoff. But you're looking at a reduced Senate majority for the GOP. Maine and Colorado probably toast. Arizona probably toast. Alabama toast for the Democrats. That gets you maybe a 51 seat, maybe a 50 seat Senate. It becomes deeply, somebody's, my buddy in Congress is texting. The lay of the land here is this, and in particular, you need to understand it. The reason Republicans want to plow full speed ahead with a Senate confirmation for Supreme Court justice is they think two things. One, the Senate Republicans think that Joe Biden is going to win. They won't say it publicly, but Senate Republicans think Joe Biden is going to win, and they don't want him picking the seat. And their calculation is that the Democrats, even if they win the Senate, their majority will be so small they're going to have a hard time getting rid of the filibuster and packing the Supreme Court because Joe Manchin and people like Kristen Sinema and some of the other Democrats that are there aren't going to want to do that. Mark Warner in Virginia, would he want to do that? Arguably not. Would Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire want to do that? Arguably not. Would Tina Smith from Minnesota want to do that? Arguably not. Would Gary Peters from Michigan? Arguably not. And then you've got Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. So Republicans think in the Senate, their entire calculation on rushing ahead with this, with the Senate seat or with the Supreme Court seat, is that the Republicans are either going to have a bare majority or lose it slightly. And if they lose it slightly, the Democrats aren't going to have the ability to get rid of the filibuster or pack the Supreme Court. So you might as well go forward with it. That explains the dynamics we're seeing in Washington today.